Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. I'm going to talk about the gendered nature of intercultural competencies, but let me start off by congratulating Professor Darla Deerhoff and Professor Sarah Howie with the launch of this UNESCO chair in intercultural competencies at Stellenbosch University. This is a credit to their qualifications and recognition of the excellence of their work in intercultural competencies. It's also a great honor for Stellenbosch University. When I ask students to define culture, they normally struggle, but we all know what culture is. It is that invisible something that makes us who we are. I guide them towards thinking about values, rituals, and practices, and eventually we end up at identity. Culture shapes us, and we shape culture. But it is because of the shaping of identity and the uniqueness of rituals and practices that it often makes intercultural communication difficult and demands that we draw on intercultural competencies. Most societies are now multicultural societies, and South Africa is no exception. It is a conglomeration of the cultures of different local ethnic groups and foreign nationals from all over the world. When Susan Moller-Oken, the American theorist, asked, "Is multiculturalism bad for women?" she centered gender in a debate about multiculturalism. But hers was a narrow Western view on the culture of the others, and mainly focusing on what she saw as practices harmful to women, African female circumcision, honor killings, and so on. In our book, Gender and Multiculturalism, Divas Tashulis and I look at the pitfalls of multiculturalism from a global South perspective, to show that underlying the features of diversity and heterogeneity in multicultural societies, there is still the imaginary of national identity and nationalism through which ruling elites seek to conformity to patriarchal and normative heterosexual relations. These struggles play themselves out on the bodies of women who often have to conform to authentic femininity and to reproduce the nation. Culture is often linked to oppressive restrictions on women's personal choices and personal freedoms, sartorial styles, or the policing of their sexuality. When women become the boundary marker of the purity and honor of the nation, then women become the boundary marker of purity and the honor of the nation. And in Africa, with its colonial past, culture is often viewed as illiberal, pre-modern, and backward. As Mahmoud Mamdani, the Ugandese scholar who is now at Columbia University, has so astutely put it about this thinking, the West has culture, but culture has the Africans. In Western societies with liberal cultures, the ideal citizen is the white, able-bodied, heterosexual man. If this is the lived experience of women in multicultural societies, it is intercultural competencies that can help us to create Benedict Anderson's imagined community, where strangers who share the same values come together and where gender equality is taken seriously. We can only understand the other through intercultural communication and through learning the sensitivities that cultural competencies can teach us. There are many such competencies, but I want to single out 4: value diversity, respect, building relationships, as well as flexibility and adaptability. What these competencies speak about is the ability to give others voice and the ability to listen and to hear. So institutional cultures are also culture, or a set of values, beliefs, and practices that determine interactions in workplaces, also in universities. The 2015-2016 Flawless movement, where students protested under the hashtag fees must fall, roads must fall, hashtag Open Stellenbosch, and so on, showed us how inhospitable institutional cultures are at historically white universities in South Africa. It pointed out the remnants of colonial cultures. And women students emphasized rape cultures. These cultures are the attitudes, beliefs, and values that normalize sexual violence. They did so from the vantage point of radical intersectional African feminism. We cannot think gender in Africa without thinking about intersectionality, as theorized by African American scholars and African feminists. Intersectionality shows how markers of identity position women in a matrix of domination: race, gender, class, sexuality, ability, and others, and also show us how relations of power intersect with each other. This means that not all women are located similarly. White women are privileged by class and race, for example. Intercultural competencies therefore have to take into consideration how different women are positioned in institutional cultures and enable those who are the most likely to be exposed to microaggressions to make their voices heard and to be understood. It will also prevent the essentialization of one identity dimension, such as race or gender, that will promote negative identity politics. So let me conclude by linking intercultural competencies to a feminist ethic of care that needs to accompany these competencies. A feminist ethics of care has the following characteristics: attentiveness, responsiveness, responsibility, and competence. And I have written extensively on care ethics also in the African context. A care ethics is relational and demands that we listen to the needs of those we care for. That's the attentive part. In similar vein, intercultural competencies should be located in relationality to enable us to understand the culture of others and how we live in relationship with others. So being responsive to the needs of others and to do that type of work with responsibility. It belies the liberal notion of the autonomous individual, because we are all members of communities and we all live in relationality with each other. At the root of intercultural competencies is the notion of Ubuntu, and this is in the African context, and Darla, you have also referred to that. So some of our work we've done, for example, on HIV/AIDS, the care ethic around HIV/AIDS patients, and looking at that. And this is the wonders of load shedding in South Africa. So we've looked at it will. Well, thank you for that. Okay. No, it's fine, thanks. So at the root of intercultural competency is the notion of Ubuntu, and like I've said, we've been doing work on care ethics with patients that are HIV/AIDS positive, and to look at how Ubuntu then embeds the principles of the ethics of care. And what we showed with that study is that the ethics of care, but also the principles of Ubuntu, rest squarely on the shoulders of women. So there's Ubuntu talk that many of us talk, but there's also Ubuntu walk and Ubuntu do. And that's what we see, that part of looking or demonstrating the interrelationality among people caring for HIV positive patients rests squarely on the shoulders of women. We often deny the humanity of others, and it is by acknowledging our relations with others that we show that we are human, fallible, and in need of others, and the responsiveness of others. It is only when we admit that we are all connected that we will be able to contribute to the prosperity of Africa. And I think this is, thinking about, you wanted to also, this chair to engage with the African continent. But as long as we deny the interrelationality, and we can look at the very high levels of xenophobia in South Africa, right? That other foreign nationals, right? They are different, they are other, they are not like us. And I have written about that, and I've drawn on Achille Mbembe's work on necropolitics. So that's the politics of death. But this is what we see, and we see this also in the way international migration plays out with Africans who leave from the shores of Libya across the Mediterranean. How Frontex, one of the companies that guards the borders of Europe, the brutality of the treatment of Black Africans. And so until we stop denying our mutual humanity and our mutual interrelationality through our own understanding of Ubuntu, I think that it is only through that we can contribute to the prosperity in Africa and a better future for Africa. So thank you.